Welcome, I'm Double and this is an after action report for a human v human or person v person match in combat mission Fortress Italy. After an earlier match with Koldobika, I recommended he try an infantry only battle as practice, and we agreed to set up a mirror game. Koldo created the QB match, and when I opened it up, what I saw had me scratching my head, both as the defender and attacker. This video is with me attacking, and I'm in command of German infantry forces. So, let's start with the situation. It's a medium-sized, quick battle probe. The objective is to take Casa Matronola to the north. It's August 1944, it's midday and the weather is clear with good ground conditions. For force composition, I've gone with motorised Panzer Grenadiers from 3rd Division. I chose those because they are generally better equipped than mechanised. Per section they have 2 MG42s, an MP40, with the rest of the section having the Kar 98K. Across a full platoon I also have 1 marksman and 2 Panzerschreck. Based on the number of requisition points for the battle, I have 3 companies of regular and veteran soldiers, with each company comprising 3 infantry platoons and a weapons platoon, with 4 MG42 HMGs and 2 on-map 81mm mortars. I also have a light flak cannon attached for AA support and off-map artillery. In total I have around 330 soldiers. My opponent's forces will be British, infantry only, and that's all I know, so I'm going to have to make some big assumptions on what I'm facing. Jumping to terrain analysis. It's quite a large open area with little vegetation, few buildings, and initially looks fairly flat. One really needs to get into the detail to see the nuances of the terrain, which is why I mentioned about scratching my head on this battle. Firstly, obstacles. There are none of note because we are infantry and we can go anywhere on the map, so I immediately look at avenues of approach. My left flank is wide open fields with low crops. There is little to no concealment or cover for any advance across around 700 metres. In the centre there is a small rise with low brick walls on the crest, and on the left sector a small 2-storey building with limited line of sight. There is defilade before the crest with limited line of sight to the defensive area. On my right flank the rise continues to another couple of buildings, again low walls and wide open fields on the furthest right flank. Frankly speaking, this looks horrible to attack. It's open with large swathes of ground I have to advance across. For key terrain, maybe the rise in the centre close to the tree orchard. This is probably the initial British defensive position. There are also the 2-storey buildings in the centre and right flank, but the centre is more observation than a firebase. I'm not going to fight from it because of limited line of sight. I'm assuming my opponent is going to have artillery and heavy machine guns, so the left is a definite no-go. The left setup zone is also visible, so I'm totally avoiding my left flank from the start. There is little concealment. It's primarily only when in defilade. There are low walls which provide some cover, but it's limited and next to useless against mortars. The weather is dry, but there is a strong wind from the east which will quickly disperse any smoke. I'm not going to bother with any attack plan to start. I shall recce forward in the centre and on the right to try and get an idea of my opponent's force and positions. I'll then adapt and form a plan whilst in the battle. I shall try and find an avenue of approach where I can dominate and advance. My initial move is going to try and create a firebase on the rise in the centre and the buildings on my right flank. I'll push scouts and then we see where we go. My kick-off point is pretty small, so my force is bunched together at the start. I try to get them moving as quickly as possible, but we're into combat right from the start. As I thought, there is line of sight on my left flank and both sides open fire. Mortars also start to fall on the centre hill crest, where I ordered 3 company to set up a firebase. They hold at the base of the slope and provide sporadic suppressive fire on the British. First Company are on my right, and First Squad, First Platoon move into the buildings on my right flank to set up an observation post. A major mistake on my part. I didn't put down any TRPs, so at the moment I can only use my mortars with direct line of sight. The fire line I was going to set up on the crest in the centre is getting hammered by British artillery, and thankfully no one is there. I suffer some casualties from shrapnel, but if the barrage had been 5 minutes later, 3rd Company would have been hit very hard. As my observation posts start to look across the AO, I'm seeing a defensive line which stretches across the battlefield in an arrowhead formation. The tip has advanced to the highest ground in the centre, with what look like medium mortars in far setback trees on my right flank. The British barrage prevents any advance in the centre, so I order 1st Company to start to test the British defences on my right flank, with 4th Platoon taking the lead. I also push 2nd Platoon towards the centre high ground. We're nearly 10 minutes into the battle and I'm starting to get some idea on Koldo's defences. The barrage on the centre crest has ceased, and I'm just giving it a couple of minutes more to ensure there is no follow-on barrage before 3rd Company start to establish a firebase. On my right, 1st Company, 4th Platoon are trying to establish a firebase, while 2nd and 3rd Platoon are moving northwest towards the high ground. 2nd Company are in the rear in reserve. On my right, I've spotted what looks like a platoon advancing. They appear to be trying to secure the outer walls to the farmstead with support from mortars in their rear and suppressing fire from the northwest. My right flank appears to have the best line of sight, so I'm going to fight to secure a firebase here and repel the British platoon attack. I shall also push for the centre to try and secure the high ground. Mortars from 4th Platoon set up. MG42s set up ahead of the mortars. Second and third platoon start to assault the high ground behind smoke. The British mortars are hitting 4th platoon hard. Second and third platoon inch forward. Second platoon from 3rd company advance on my left to start to set up a firebase on the walls at the crest of the rise. But accurate mortar fire forces them to withdraw. My probe on the central high ground, 2nd and 3rd platoon, gets caught in crossing fire in a reverse slope defensive setup. Suddenly, on my right, heavy artillery. I order 2nd and 3rd platoon to put down smoke as they withdraw. Medium and light mortar rounds start to fall on the high ground as well. With a heavy barrage on the way, I order the rest of my right flank to pull back. We're nearly 15 minutes into the battle and I've gathered a lot of intel. The British have a strong mortar and artillery presence, potentially with TRPs. The crest to my centre left is well covered by an extended defensive line, reaching all the way across the left flank. The high ground in the centre is also well covered by defences left and right, with no concealment or real cover and too small an area for me to attack from. It's a killing ground. On the right, I have the largest possible space to set up a firebase, with low walls for cover, but it's covered by mortars and heavy arty. Koldo is also advancing in that sector, trying to set up a defensive line to prevent me using that area. I'm going to wait out the artillery, potentially goad him into using as much of it as possible. In the meantime, I'm also calling in my artillery on the yellow lines to hit his defensive lines. 2nd and 3rd platoons will try and prevent any further British advance on the right as I manoeuvre the battalion into position, and then I'll try again and set up a firebase on my right flank. As my barrages start to fall, I withdraw 2nd Company from the attack on the high ground and the remaining elements of 3rd Company from the hill crest. It looks like Koldo is moving sections to reinforce his attack on my right flank. I order 2nd Platoon, 1st Company to harass their advance. After a few minutes, the British barrages seem to be abating, so I start to position 4th Platoon, 1st Company as the first layer in my firebase. The entire 2nd Company are also moving from the centre to my right flank. On my left, a barrage falls on an empty crest. I've left a single MG team in a building to draw fire. On my right, I set up a couple of mortars to target the British mortars to the rear. They are also bait, to see if Koldo puts a barrage on my right flank, where I intend to set up the firebase. I also start to reposition 3rd Company from my left to my right flank. As all this takes place, 1st and 2nd Company sits and waits. Koldo is also shelling the reverse slope behind the high ground. Thankfully, no one is there. They are all further back. Finally, after a few minutes, the commanders blow their whistles and the HMGs from 1st and 2nd Company rush forward. The rest of 2nd Company and the HMGs from 3rd Company will quickly follow. 2nd and 3rd Platoon 1st Company also start to set up a forward line. A full-scale assault is now underway. We are over 35 minutes into the 60-minute battle. My plan for the firebase and then an assault on my right flank is working, and I've managed to also use a gully for additional cover for my advance. Koldo still has a strong defence, and I'm having to continually lay down suppressing fire with MGs and mortars. With the sections also having 2 MG42s per section, I have around 22 MGs per company, 66 for the battalion, which is a lot of firepower. I'm going to push 1st and 2nd Company along the gully and up through the lower orchard. I'll then follow with 3rd Company and leave all the support weapons, HMGs and mortars, at the firebase to provide suppressing fire. I don't think Koldo can hold back my attack. The question is, can he slow me down long enough to hold the objective and count down the clock? 3rd Company join the attack. First Platoon, 1st Company start their push towards the upper orchard. Second Platoon, 1st Company, together with 2nd Platoon, 2nd Company, are first through the lower orchard to the farm buildings. My assault pauses to allow the battalion to put down heavy fire on the British defence line. I push forward 3rd Company to flank the British line. The battalion pushes closer and closer to the objective. Then, with 11 minutes left, Koldo surrenders, and the 3rd Panzer Grenadier Battalion takes the battle, getting a total victory. This was a tough nut to crack, and Koldobika's defence was tenacious. I had to bunch my soldiers close together, much more than I should do, and if Koldo had artillery left, he could have inflicted serious damage to my force. I had such firepower once the British arty was used, I'd have had to do something pretty stupid to not be able to roll forward. I want to thank Koldobika. This was ultimately a nice map to fight on and very challenging. This was a mirror match, so I'll get the second video with my defence out there as quickly as possible. If you haven't already, please subscribe and like the video. It all helps the channel get noticed. Stay safe everyone.